Hello, thank you for being in a new video. This time I have with me the Galaxy S23 FE and we're going to do a full review. Let's get started. This is the Samsung device intended for all the fans who want the best of Samsung for the lowest possible price. So I definitely think it is a device that attracts too much attention and that I personally liked, that I must anticipate, although I must also make the clarification that I started testing it only in 2024. And I say this because it seems to me that the most recent updates that this device has received have perfected the experience, especially in battery and processor, where the first units that began to be sold could have some drawbacks. This device is available in two configurations. The basic one is 128 gigabytes of storage at a price of 12,999 pesos in Mexico. On the screen, you see the reference price in dollars to give you an idea if you are not from here, but remember that the prices here are not the same as those there. There is also a version with 256 gigabytes of storage at a price of 14,999 pesos, which would be more or less $890, although I insist that the prices here are not the same as those there. In any case, remember that it is likely that this device will continue to drop in price and thus become even more interesting. So how about joining me to get to know it completely so we can see what it can offer us against its competitors? Let's start by taking a look at the front, because here we will find Gorilla Glass 5 as protection, something that is totally positive, although in Samsung's flagship devices we find Gorilla Glass Victus or the new Gorilla Armor. But obviously in this device, being of adjusted price, we find a good protection still, although it is not the most advanced. But possibly one of the weakest or least attractive points of this device will be the size of its bezels, because as you will notice, they are considerably large besides not being symmetrical, since the lower bezel is a little thicker. Obviously in the market you will find other devices even cheaper with much thinner bezels. So aesthetically the front is not one of the most attractive we've seen lately. The frame is made of aluminum and feels quite sharp-edged. On the right side we find power button and also volume buttons. On the top is one of the microphones and the tray. In this tray we can place two nano SIM cards. The left side is completely clean and simply confirms that the aluminum frame is quite rigid and resistant. While on the bottom we will find the speaker grill, two microphones and the USB-C port. The backtop of this device is made of glass, giving a premium feel. And it reminds a lot of the Galaxy A54 because if you didn't know, somehow this device is replacing the Galaxy A70 series. So you may possibly perceive this device as if it is a Galaxy A74. Another thing you should know is that it feels like a heavy device as it has a weight of 209 grams, although the good news is that it is IP68 certified. So if you happen to drop it in the water, it has a very high chance of surviving, as this certification ensures that it can withstand a depth of 1.5 meters for 30 minutes in pure water. And another positive point is the availability of colors, since in this case I have the mint color edition, but it is also available in graphite, cream and purple. In fact, if you buy it online, two exclusive indigo and orange editions appear. So aesthetically it's a nice device. Let's say nice, not the most advanced, but I wish it had a more attractive front end. The screen is 6.4 inches, and although it may sound like it's a compact device, actually because of the size of the bezels, it doesn't feel like such a compact device. Fortunately, the screen has a good resolution, Full HD+, specifically it is 1080 by 2340 pixels, so it has a 19.5:9 ratio, unlike most smartphones today that come with 20:9 ratio. With this screen size and this resolution, it achieves a pixel density of 402 pixels per inch. So we are looking at a screen that is capable of showing us a good level of detail, both in videos, images, multimedia content, as well as small text. So the screen really is very good. In fact, its technology is Dynamic AMOLED 2X. That is the same screen technology that Samsung uses in its high-end series. So in this aspect, it comes to stand out very much as a screen of excellent quality. In addition, it has a function called Vision Booster, through which when you are under the sunlight, the colors will adapt through an intelligent algorithm to improve its visualization. Then, the brightness of this screen is really good, and it also has 120 Hz in its refresh rate, so that all movements are going to look quite fluid and very nice. In fact, this refresh rate automatically adapts between 120 or 60, but also manually you could set it to only 60 if you want to consume less battery. Like every Galaxy, it has two color calibrations, one with less saturated colors and one with more intense colors. Although it also lets you refine the color temperature, and in the advanced settings you can also customize specifically how you want the screen to look. For example, in my case, I feel it looks better if we lower the blue and green. In addition, it obviously has the eye protection and dark mode modes that virtually all cell phones come with. Although the eye protection mode not only applies a yellow filter, but will also modify some interpretation of the colors of the screen for an even more comfortable viewing. The sound of this device is of good quality, although asymmetrical since the main speaker is the one placed at the bottom and it is the one with more volume and greater presence of bass frequencies. The secondary speaker is placed at the top along with the earphone for calls. We would like it to have a specific grille on the frame for a more symmetrical sound projection. And overall, despite having good volume, I feel that the bass frequencies don't stand out as much as we would like. But what do you think if we listen to a small test, although remember that it is not the same to listen to it live? And another positive point is that it has a 9-band equalizer available without the need to connect headphones. In addition, you have some easy presets to change the sound style, and there's also Dolby Atmos with different presets and even Dolby Atmos for gaming, so you can have the most immersive sound experience possible. In fact, Samsung also has a feature called Standalone App Sound, which allows you to send the sound of some apps to a Bluetooth speaker and the sound of other apps make it stay on the device, so that in case you are playing music in some party with friends, you can listen to some voice notes or some other things directly on your cell phone without sounding them on the Bluetooth speaker. So, this feature definitely gives us a very advanced experience that we don't find in smartphones from other brands. The downside is that it doesn't have a headphone jack. So you're definitely going to have to opt for USB-C headphones or wireless headphones. And in case you want to use wireless headphones, it does have advanced high-resolution codecs like aptX or Samsung's own SSC codec. So the best wireless audio experience you're going to get if you buy Galaxy Buds. Fortunately though, you can also buy other brands of headphones that have the aptX codec. Below you will hear some audio recorded with this device.
Esta es una prueba de los micrófonos del Galaxy S23 FE. Cuenta con 3 micrófonos para ser exactos y estamos en un ambiente silencioso.
Obviously, the microphones on this device will be of very good quality, although we were in a very quiet environment. But below you will hear the quality of these microphones in a noisy environment simulating a concert. With this, we can confirm that the microphones do not distort even in conditions of too high volume. The front camera is 10 megapixels with f2.4 aperture and fixed focus. So it's a camera that we could say is simple compared to the high-end cameras that Samsung usually puts out. Fortunately, it retains the 2-tap gesture on the home button for quick opening of the camera, even if the device is locked. So it's very handy. In addition, it will feature a considerably fast capture. If we slide down, we can shoot a burst of many pictures to capture the exact moment, and if we hold down the shutter, we can also initiate the brief capture of a short video. In addition, if it is difficult to reach the shutter, you also have the function to quickly show the palm of your hand and a timer is activated to take the picture. In fact, in the settings, you could also enable voice commands to take pictures or the floating shutter so you can move it anywhere and thus you can reach it more easily. The camera interface really seems very comfortable to me. We have 2 levels of width, and in the upper right corner we can enter a section to enable the beauty mode where we have multiple parameters such as skin smoothing, also skin tone, jaw size and eye size. But we can also select some color filters that we can preview in real time, and we can even download more filters from the Galaxy Store. Or we can also select color tone if we want a slightly warmer color rendition in our selfies. For our tests, we took them all with the natural tone. Photos with this front camera will be of good quality, although it has 2 levels of wide. So at the most closed setting, the photos are 7 megapixels, while at the most open setting, they reach the resolution of 10 megapixels at this automatic setting. So the level of detail I think is good, but nothing spectacular. Backlit noticed that the preview doesn't look optimized, but it does have automatic HDR, which anyway doesn't have as spectacular a result as we would have liked, at least as of today, although this could improve with some future update. Indoors, this camera still has a sufficiently good level of detail, although a little more noise appears, especially in darker areas, but maintains good color saturation. Finally, at night, the result is still positive, very similar to the indoor pictures. That is, it maintains good color saturation, although there is also a little more noise and grain in the darker areas. In twilight situations, note how it manages to illuminate very well thanks to a small illumination through the screen simulating a flash, which is not uncomfortable and maintains a considerably natural lighting. The result is positive, although it is quite noticeable how it tries to eliminate noise, giving a slightly pastel effect in the darker areas. But take a look at what the preview of that same location looked like to get a sense of what a total twilight situation was like. Finally, remember that this front-facing camera is indeed capable of taking portrait shots, so in the evenings it also takes good quality portraits, although a bit of noise is still present. And in the daytime, portraits will also be of good quality. Note how in this case, it does try to keep the foreground in focus even though it's just an object. It doesn't do it with 100% accuracy, but there are many even more expensive devices that fail to keep these areas in focus. So the result for front portraits is entirely positive. On the back we have the 12mm camera, which is the ultra-wide, with 8 megapixels and f2.2 aperture plus fixed focus. Then we find the 24mm face, which we can consider as the main camera with a 50 megapixel sensor and f1.8 aperture plus optical stabilization and of course autofocus. And finally we have the 70mm camera I optical zoom 3x with a sensor of 8 megapixels and f2.4 aperture plus optical stabilization. So in summary, it has 3 very good cameras. As you will realize, by default, the photographs will come out 12 megapixels, as the pixels of the 50 megapixel sensor are merged, and if you want a high resolution photograph, you can take them by changing that setting. The device features considerably snappy capturing. I'm going to make 2 attempts at capturing number 1 specifically to see how accurate this capture might become. This is my second attempt, and let's review the results. It appears that the capture is extremely accurate. On this attempt, it was a capture at exactly the right time, and even on the previous attempt, I was a little bit ahead of schedule. So the capture responds very nimbly, and that's a plus point. There is also the burst available by sliding the shutter down, and as you can see, it has very good speed. In the upper right corner will appear the same filters button that we saw on the front camera, and in this case, the same color filters available, and in the face effects, we will also find the same parameters. The only thing we will not find will be the photo tone selector, and this other button is for the photo to also appear with an animation prior to the moment of capture. For manual controls, we can tap on the screen to adjust the focus or exposure, but we can also access the Pro mode where we can modify other parameters such as ISO, shutter speed, exposure compensation, focus, white balance, and even at the top we can still adjust a bit more things like metering type or contrast, highlights, shadows, saturation and tint. As you realize, it is a considerably advanced photography with all these parameters, and in the settings we can select if we want RAW or only JPG photographs. But something you should know is that unlike Samsung's high-end devices, this one is not compatible with Samsung's Expert RAW application, which is even more professional. The main camera does have the 50 megapixel mode, so you can take high-resolution photos, and in this case all the pixels of the photo are well exploited, so you can make a crop and you can keep exactly the same level of detail. Outdoors, the main camera notes as it has a good behavior, although with colors a little more saturated than natural, but we note a good quality of photography with good contrast and good level of detail. The ultra-wide camera outdoors also has a good behavior, although in it we will notice a little more distortions and chromatic aberration in the edges, so it is not a lens of such quality. Remember that it offers us a third telephoto camera with optical zoom 3x, and in it we also have a good quality of photographs, although we are also going to notice a little chromatic aberration in some areas, so it is not such a spectacular lens, but for the price range I think it maintains a considerably high zoom. In fact, the maximum zoom is 30x, and still through different algorithms, it manages to improve some details, and I think that in the price range, it is possibly the best device for zoom. In moving situations, all three cameras capture well objects or people with a lot of action. You don't see a sweep effect, so you manage to maintain a considerably static image with all three lenses. In the case of the telephoto lens, we only saw one area with a slight sweep, but this can obviously be a natural effect. Indoors, all three cameras maintain a very similar color rendition. That's a good thing, although obviously the ultra-wide camera has a fixed focus, so there could be some out-of-focus areas and there could be a little more noise present because it's a lens that doesn't have as much light coming in. The main camera will be ideal for this type of conditions with intermediate light, maintaining good color saturation. And the telephoto camera sincerely surprised me because despite not having so much aperture, it maintains the light input well to avoid so much noise in these situations. In backlit situations, it is surprising that the preview does look optimized so you don't see the burnt sky. And in the photograph taken, we will also have a good result, although the shadow area would like to have a little more lighting, but overall I think the result is positive, although I insist that the shadow area could be a little less defined with a little more grainy. The ultra-wide camera also performs well in this kind of light conditions, and the telephoto camera also performs well, so it maintains a consistent performance. At night, the ultra-wide camera can suffer a bit more, even distorting the colors a bit and reducing the level of detail a lot. The main camera shows a much more natural result, with good color and good level of detail, and finally the telephoto camera also manages to have a consistent color, although the level of detail is lower since there is much less light and this lens does not have as much aperture. In fact, in certain situations the device will prefer to use digital zoom if there is not much light, and in darker conditions the main camera may suffer with respect to white balance, having very poor color accuracy. Notice how in this case the ultra-wide camera was the most accurate in terms of color and had a good result, and in the telephoto shot it actually used digital zoom because it was a bit darker and again the colors came out quite bad. And finally, in twilight conditions, see what the preview looks like, and this is what the result looks like with the picture with automatic night mode enabled. So we have a positive result considering there was practically no light. On the other hand, the ultra-wide may suffer a bit more, but still apply a night mode to try to improve the detail. And finally, for the zoom, we confirm that it does not use optical zoom but digital zoom when there is not so much light. For macro photography, we will find a totally positive result. Although it does not have a camera specialized in this type of photography, observe how the main lens can perfectly focus on these objects and the level of detail is completely high. And in case you want wider captures, you can use the panoramic mode with both the main camera and the ultra-wide camera, and definitely that the results are positive in every way as it also offers us a high resolution. Finally, portrait photography is undoubtedly excellent, keeping the foreground perfectly in focus and blurring the background with a natural bokeh effect. Even in backlit conditions, we see a good result without overexposed areas, and it also lets you use both the main camera and the telephoto camera to give an even more professional result. Video recording, you'll notice that it's quite peculiar with respect to its compatibility in resolutions, as the main lens can record in 8K at 24 frames per second or even in 4K at 60 frames per second. However, it is the only one of the 4 cameras that has the ability to record in this quality. In fact, you will also notice that both the front camera and the main camera can record in 4K at 60 frames per second or also in full HD at 60 frames per second. But the funny thing is that in this configuration you can't use the ultra-wide camera or the zoom camera, so you are quite limited if you want to record at 60 frames per second, and that could be a weak point. The good news is that all cameras do have the ability to record in 4K at 30 frames per second. When starting a video recording, note that we can take pictures while we are recording, we can also pause and resume the content, and we can even turn on the flashlight without the need to stop our recording. But what I like most about the Galaxy devices is that they do let us rotate to the front camera without the need to stop our video, and this way we can achieve a much more complete video when we are recording in the family. It also has a pretty convenient slider for zooming, which not only has a convenient linear slider but also direct access to some zoom presets, in this case to switch directly between the three lenses. At the top you can enable super steady mode, which I'll show you in a moment, and it also has an automatic framing function that will zoom you in to keep you always in the center of the video. And for manual parameters, just like in photography, we can tap on the screen to adjust the focus or exposure, but we also have access to the professional video mode. In this mode, again, we can access parameters like ISO, shutter speed, exposure compensation, focus and white balance, but we also have access to a microphone selector, so you can select whether you want omnidirectional audio or whether you want audio through USB devices or even through Bluetooth devices or a mix of the built-in microphones with a Bluetooth microphone. Then it has good professional recording parameters as well. I find the video recording acceptable, although with the ultra-wide camera you notice much more chromatic aberration and it doesn't feel like a very high-quality scene, but when you switch to the main camera it feels like it improves drastically, so it's positive that it lets you switch between the three lenses when recording in, when recording in, when recording in, when recording in, and that's something worth highlighting. Subsequently, on the telephoto camera we also have good quality, and in fact it also stands out that the zoom can go a little bit smoothly without aggressive jumps between lens changes. So the video recording experience seems to me to be positive, although the quality with the ultra-wide camera does leave something to be desired. But the other two cameras I think can get good quality video recording. Indoors again, the ultra-wide camera confirms that it has little light input, and when we switch to the main camera you will notice the improvement immediately because the presence of noise is reduced, so the color saturation and level of detail is well maintained. And in this case again we will notice that if there is a bit of darkness, possibly the telephoto camera is not used and the device prefers digital zoom. There are other times when it does prefer the lens, but there may be a little bit more noise, so in conditions where there is not so much illumination, the most advisable will be to record only with the main camera. And in backlit conditions, we see a good balance of light and shadow even with the ultra-wide camera, although it is confirmed that we have a little stronger chromatic aberration. Surprisingly, with the main camera we have less highlight and shadow balance, leaving the shadows a bit darker than we would like. Possibly in this case it did not detect the face and therefore gave priority to illuminate the background. And finally, with the telephoto camera, I think we do have a sufficient balance of lights and shadows, but the level of detail is slightly reduced. So I think that in this aspect it is not the best, but you can have an acceptable result. At night, even the main camera can suffer a little by reducing noise if there is a lot of movement. Notice how when the shot is a bit static, the noise tries to fade out, but when there is more movement, the noise becomes much more present. It is also not very capable of getting full illumination and level of detail in the darker areas, and this with the main camera, but if you switch to the ultra-wide camera, the result will be much worse. So it definitely doesn't excel at night video recording with any of the three lenses. The telephoto lens is generally not going to be used in these low light environments. And that's even though in this case we still had some artificial light sources around. So it wasn't that dark of a situation, but the device didn't really excel in this section. The stabilization with the automatic mode is considerably good if you are walking. Notice how we definitely have a subtle movement where you don't get to notice vibrations as much. Even with the ultra-wide camera, we will notice even better stabilization. And what strikes me about this device is that also with the telephoto camera, we are going to have good stabilization, considering that it also has optical stabilization. So even when walking with this camera, we will have a good result. And if we go running, we will also have a good result with both the ultra-wide camera and the main camera. Although obviously when you switch to the telephoto camera, if you are running, you can notice the movement much more. But honestly, the results seem to me to be considerably positive. And if you use the super stable mode, definitely the result will be superior. Although in this mode does not let you switch between the ultra-wide camera and the main camera, and the result is in full HD. Also, I already mentioned that the ultra-wide camera does not have so much quality for video recording. So with the main camera we would have a better result. But if it is a scene with a lot of backlight, the vibrations will be much more noticeable. So I didn't really like the super stable mode. The device also integrates a full HD portrait video recording mode, although it honestly looks quite artificial. The edges are very noticeable and the result does not look of good quality as if it could look in Samsung flagship devices. In fact, you will also notice that it is not able to modify the intensity of the blur depending on the distance of the people, so the result definitely looks a bit artificial. Plus, it can't keep objects in focus. Supposedly it lets you record by applying zoom 3x, but again the quality is not very good. At times it can get out of focus, and again we don't see totally accurate detection of people in the foreground. Even if there's a lot of movement, as I tell you, it could go too out of focus. So this is definitely not positive, and it's a far cry from Samsung's high end. The device also allows you to take a fast camera from 5x on 4K all the way up to 60x. The advantage is that it lets you record video in 4K with this fast motion effect. But the disadvantage is that 60x may be a bit short for some special landscape scenes or something like that, considering that there are other devices that let you go up to 1800x or more, so the fast camera may fall a bit short. Although for nighttime effects it does let you go up to 300x, but you can't use it in the daytime because the video will be completely burned out. Slow motion can be at 240 frames per second in full HD, and the result is considerably good. I think if you could get to have creative scenes with this effect without any kind of problem, even in backlit conditions, and it also has the super slow motion mode. Although in this mode, if you're backlit, you might get a little more noise in the darker scenes, but I love the result it is able to get because it looks quite natural, and especially very striking for social networks. In the front camera, we will also have a good quality when recording outdoors. Note how in this case I'm alternating in light and shadow situations, although backlighting does not become as remarkable as we could get to notice in some high-end devices. So if you get to have overexposed areas if you are in the shadows. But what I like is that it maintains good stability when walking, although it does have a considerable crop to it. So you have to stretch your arm a lot if you want to come out well framed. What I also liked is that you can shoot in 4K at 60 frames per second, which would be remarkable, but it doesn't have autofocus. So if you zoom in on an object or whatever, it will come out of focus. In interiors, it will lose a lot of quality since it will appear much more noise and will lose definition, although it maintains color saturation well, but it is not really a camera that stands out in the segment. And at night, if you are very close to some artificial lighting, you will still have a positive result, but if there is more movement again, you will notice a lot of vibration and more noise presence, so I insist that it is not a remarkable camera in this aspect. We will also find the possibility of recording fast camera with this front camera, and if it has stabilization, which is something we could get to highlight, it also offers a simple front slow motion mode, and curiously also allows us to record with portrait video effect, although in full HD. But again, as in the rear camera will not have as much precision, although I think it comes out slightly better than the result came out with the rear camera. But it also won't be able to detect objects to focus on them. And finally, if you have the ability to record videos with the rear camera and the front camera at the same time, you can switch between multiple cameras, but you don't have continuous zoom, so the result could be better. Considering that there are other cell phone manufacturers that have a better dual recording mode, fortunately it does let you move the rectangle to the position you want, and also toggle between the front camera and the main camera. It doesn't let you resize the picture-in-picture mode frame though. You can also record with a split screen mode again in full HD. Hopefully someday some manufacturer will allow us to record with this dual mode in 4K. At the moment I haven't seen any with those capabilities. This device was released with Android 13. However, it has already received the update to Android 14 with One UI 6. So this update has been very good for it, with new features and better optimization. In addition, Samsung promises 4 years of software updates and 5 years of security patches. So we are in front of a device that comes well equipped in this feature. It also has attractive functions that Samsung adds little by little to its devices. For example, we are going to find always on display so that you can always display a bit of content, and it has different styles of watches. You can also select the color you want it to have, and you can even add some stickers, emojis, or even pictures to be displayed on your screen. It also integrates the panel's edge feature, where you not only have shortcuts to apps, but you can also add other types of panels such as clipping tools, direct access to people to call or send messages, or even direct access to other app tasks. And you can also download more panels from the Galaxy Store. So, of all the sidebars that all Android manufacturers have, Samsung has the most advanced one. Similarly, through the Samsung Labs section, we're going to be able to enable multi-window for all apps and not just the supported ones. So you can open apps in floating mode from anywhere, and you can resize and reposition them. Best of all, even applications that are generally not supported in this mode, you can force them to be supported. Although some might still have a few flaws like this white bar, but in general we can get considerably elevated experience in the use of multiple applications at the same time, as you can have many windows and even on top of the split screen. It also has modes and routines through which you can automate many things on your smartphone. For example, you can tell it your bedtime and wake up time so that the device automatically makes changes depending on the mode it is in. It also has other modes. For example, it can link with your Galaxy Watch so that when you are exercising, the device will also change its settings. However, if you want more specific automated settings, you can access the routines. There are several preset routines that you can take advantage of, or you can create your own routines with causes and consequences. For example, in causes we can have a large list of parameters such as time or device connectivity, or even some events such as opening certain apps or receiving certain notifications or calls. A routine that I use very often is to enable or disable the rotation when opening an application. For example, I will select that at the moment of opening the gallery. The consequence is that this rotation is enabled. So in this way, we will find a good functionality and it will be completely automatic. In addition, the gallery also has a draft of objects at the time of editing. Possibly it will receive an update with more artificial intelligence in the future, but at least at the time of recording this video, see how I can select objects and delete them with this automatic eraser. Finally, also note the presence of Samsung Members, which is an app where you can report any problems or bugs, but also where Samsung can give you more benefits for being a Galaxy user. For example, they can give you some discounts not only on Samsung products, but also in collaboration with other companies. Here in Mexico, for example, they offer you discounts when renting a car, booking hotels, or some other similar things. This is definitely the most full-featured operating system available today, and in conjunction with the X-axis vibration motor that this device has, it gives a very good optical feedback experience. For example, when you are swiping through these types of lists, you feel a very pleasant tapping in your hand, so the interaction throughout the system is considerably good. Now let's talk about security, and for that I must start by telling you that the fingerprint reader only supports 3 records. That will be a weak point since most devices support 5 records, so there is no doubt that you do not have so much versatility to register so many trusted people. It also does not allow you to change the unlock animation, which almost all other manufacturers do. Obviously, unlocking is going to be considerably fast, but not as fast as capacitive readers. Just place your finger for a second and the device will unlock without any problem. In addition to fingerprint unlocking, we also have facial recognition unlocking, but it is not as recommended since it is only in 2 dimensions, so it is an unlocking that is not 100% secure. Samsung also has the Samsung Pass function, which is a password manager and a completely secure store that you will be able to access with your fingerprint. Here you can automatically save your passwords and users, or you can even add them manually to remember them later. You can also store card information, addresses or notes, and all of this can be easily accessed from the keyboard. When you log into an application, it will automatically give you the Samsung Pass suggestion and will obviously check for your fingerprint before filling in the fields. And in the case of the keyboard, you can access through this quick menu to the Samsung Pass section, and again by checking for your fingerprint, you can access your login information or additional information that you have saved. Previously, it also has a special function for protection when you are with children. It is called Samsung Kids, although it is a bit hidden and you have to add it from this panel since by default it is turned off. But by accessing this mode, you can confidently lend this cell phone to a child without fear that they will access inappropriate applications. Samsung even adds some applications that you can download by default to the child where you have some games and special settings, but also from the parental control settings you can add applications that you already have installed on your device. You can also authorize some contacts and media content. So definitely that is a good way available to give the child a little more limits when using a cell phone. In fact, you can also set limits on screen time usage or even a bedtime. Obviously, to get out of this mode, the child will have to check first with the footprint. Also, in taking care of the device, you will also notice that Samsung has application protection in collaboration with McAfee Antivirus. By default, it comes turned off, because if you're a cautious enough user, you don't need it. But if you think you do need additional protection, you could enable it and it will be constantly scanning to protect you from any malware. In the security options, Samsung also integrates Lost Device protection. So it is very important that you enable the offline search option and also send last location, because in case you happen to lose your phone, you can try to find it on smartthingsfind.samsung.com. It also integrates the traditional digital wellness options, so you can see how much time you spend on each application and you can even set specific limits. And emergency options, pressing the power button 5 times to make a call. On the battery, we will find something too curious because in the foreground, if you demand too much from the device with the processor, the battery consumption will be quite excessive. So it could give you about 2 hours less compared to other 5000 mAh battery devices. However, it has excellent background application running, so it doesn't consume too much power on these kinds of applications, unlike other devices. Therefore, if you are a user too intense in high consumption applications, you will definitely feel that the battery will not perform well enough. In fact, the camera is one of those applications that consume a lot of power, so the battery does not get to stand out too much. With the exception of the excellent management it has of the battery consumption of background applications where it does an excellent job. In fact, it also has a daily power saving mode that you could get to use on a daily basis, or you can also enable this option so that you have an even more aggressive power saving mode. And despite having several restrictions, Samsung still allows you to add 4 apps that you deem essential to make it available as well. Remember that the charger is sold separately, and that to me is still a drawback. It supports charging up to 25 watts. In 15 minutes it recovered 32% power in my test. In 30 minutes it got up to 62% and finished charging in practically an hour. So I think it does get to charge quickly, but the fact that I have to buy the charger separately bothers me quite a bit. The good news is that it does support wireless charging, so you could very well place it on some dock you already have and the device will automatically start charging, although it's a 15-watt charge, so it's not that fast. And to protect the battery, at the moment it only has the 85% lock on its charge, but when it gets the next update, more options like smart charging will be added. But something that I also really like is that it has the option to share battery wirelessly. That is, you can use this device as if it were a charging base and place on top of it some other cell phone, watch or headphones so you can get to charge it, although obviously it is a fairly slow charge, but you can get out of an emergency. This is a feature that very few devices have in this price range, so it can also be a strong point. Connectivity is also positive, as it has support for 5G networks and also has an option to block mobile data from individual apps, so you can have better control of your data consumption. One thing I like is that it also has support for eSIM, so you can have more convenience when traveling, or you can also sign up for some other services that offer you this feature. The support for Wi-Fi networks is also positive, as it has Wi-Fi 6, so it can offer you a good download speed, although obviously this depends on your internet provider, but this device does have very good capabilities. It also has Bluetooth 5.3 for stable connectivity, and it does have NFC so you can make contactless payments, either using Google Pay or some other application. You should be aware that it does not integrate FM radio, and its wireless screen projection is going to be positive, as it has Smart View, so you can even project individual apps with very good features. Although if you want to project to a Chromecast, you must install Google Home and the projection will be simpler, but it also has projection via cable. And that is something quite positive, because in this price range, very few devices have that feature. And even better, it has Samsung DeX, so you could enable a computer-style window interface so you can open multiple applications and increase your productivity, because you could actually connect a wireless keyboard and a wireless mouse, and it would definitely be a work unit for simple jobs. So it has very good connectivity features, and of course it has Android Auto as well, so you can seamlessly connect to your vehicle's display. You will also notice that it has all the sensors you could ask for, including the geomagnetic field sensor and gyroscope. But you should also know that the proximity sensor is a virtual sensor, so you might have some complications activating it. It practically has to be glued to your ear for it to activate, so it's a proximity sensor that I don't like. This is definitely a weak point. Let's talk about the ecosystem, and you should know that in this aspect Samsung is one of the best manufacturers, as it offers an excellent catalog of devices that you can connect to this cell phone. For example, there are the Galaxy Buds, Galaxy Watch, Galaxy Tab, even their own TVs or the Freestyle projector, so the connectivity is very good in conjunction with other accessories. Although in Mexico, the Galaxy Book, which would be the laptop, is not distributed, so the ecosystem feels incomplete by that absence. In other countries, the laptop is available and it would feel a much more complete ecosystem. So Samsung does have very good interaction between all its devices, something that few manufacturers today can offer. It also has interesting technologies and features such as music share, so that several friends can connect to listen to music. It also has functions for the Galaxy Buds to automatically switch devices in case they are connected to your tablet and others. In fact, you can also continue applications from your cell phone directly on your Galaxy Tab if they are applications such as Internet or Samsung Notes. It has all the Windows integration, so even though you don't have a Galaxy Tab, you do have the software installed that is necessary to link your cell phone with the computer. It also has the multi-control feature that would allow you to switch the cursor from your Galaxy Book to your cell phone or to your tablet. So everything is perfectly well connected. And of course, for Internet of Things devices, you have SmartThings, which is an excellent application. Compatible with a large number of brands, it's possibly the best ecosystem of Internet of Things devices. So here you could configure your air conditioner, your light bulbs, and other home devices. So definitely Samsung feels like a very strong brand collaborating very well with other brands, because in this case it has the traditional 15GB ones that Google Drive offers you. It also comes with OneDrive pre-installed, where you are offered another 5GB for free. Even OneDrive is seamlessly integrated into the gallery, so you can automatically sync all your photos. So Samsung has very good collaborations with other companies, but at the same time it feels that it becomes dependent on these companies and is still not able to offer you everything on its own merits. Let's now move on to talk about performance. This is somewhat controversial as the device has the Exynos 2200 processor, a processor that has not been very well received by much of the community. It is accompanied by 8GB of RAM, and in fact you can put another 8GB of virtual RAM on it, although I don't recommend it as much. And for storage, remember that there are 128 or even 256GB versions, but you can't put any micro SD cards on it. And as you can see in this case, in a test by quickly opening 16 applications, it took on average 2.8 seconds to open each one of them. I think the performance is considerably good. Obviously, it's not at the same level of other flagships that would definitely have even more power, because the processor seems like they've tried to limit it a little bit to avoid excessive battery consumption and also overheating. So I haven't had any problems with the battery lasting too little, but I can confirm that the performance doesn't feel as smooth as it should with such a powerful processor. So it seems to me that the processor has been limited a little bit more to prevent the battery from draining so fast. And as a consequence, we have here scrolling that is not so agile. As you can see, the transitions between applications don't feel responsive, but I guess if you're not that picky about it, you might not notice these little delays. What you will get to notice is app restarts, so despite having 8GB of RAM, you may come up short if you're one of those users who have too many apps open in the background. Notice how there are white screens and several annoying restarts. Undoubtedly, this is a weak point because the device is not able to keep so many applications open. Next, we will perform the test of exporting a video with total duration of 1 minute by joining several clips recorded in 4K, so let's see how long it takes. That's it! It took 31 seconds, so it seems that in this aspect it does have enough power to be able to edit good quality videos. Although I must say that at this point the heating is starting to be felt a little more, so I think it is a device that has a heating a little bit beyond the regular smartphones. And finally, let's talk about gaming. For this, Samsung offers Gaming Hub, which has been the way they have renamed the game launcher as it was previously called. In this case, we can see all the games we have installed, but we can also access instant games that we can run without the need to download them. So you could save quite a bit of space on your device if you simply play this content. But for the more advanced gamers who like to have high-quality games, we are also going to have Game Booster, where we have some additional options like shortcuts that may be present during our games, and we can also configure how we want the screenshots to be and if we want to give priority to performance or priority to battery saving. In fact, we can also have the power go directly to the processor while we're charging with a power delivery charger and thus avoid a little bit more heating when we're gaming. So the software options are considerably good. In fact, notice how when we enter a game, we're going to have additional options on this part as well, as we can enable a priority mode so that incoming calls and notifications are muted. In addition, we have another button over here so that the screen is suspended for a moment while the game continues to download content in the background. We can also have another option to lock the navigation bar, options to take screenshots in image and video, and we can also have shortcuts to applications so that without leaving our game we can enter to answer a message or something similar. Remember that we could even make this window a bit transparent, so we have without a doubt a lot of options here. In addition to that, we have the game plugins where we can enable more add-ons like Game Booster Plus to customize even more deeply the performance we want to have in each of the games. For example, if I want Call of Duty to have a different performance, I can enter here and select if I want 100% graphic quality and 100% in frames, or I want to limit it a little bit so that it does not consume so much my battery. We can also select Frame Booster, which will try to improve the fluidity in the frames per second. Besides that, there are other add-ons such as a fixed sight for shooting games, game clock to have some timers. We also have GIF creators, a priority mode, and PerfZ, which is the application through which you can constantly show the consumption you are having of CPU, GPU, and how many frames per second the content is running. So, as you will notice, the software for games comes extremely complete and is one of its strong points. In Call of Duty, by default, it loads very high quality graphics at a high frame rate. In fact, the maximum rate is also available, but the graphic quality is slightly lowered. You could also use the very high quality with a very high rate. So for the test, we will give priority to the frame rate per second, but notice how it does not have several special effects of the game available because the processor is not so optimized, even though it is not a modern processor. With this configuration in Call of Duty, we had an excellent experience. Let's say that this processor is well optimized, although in the S Vintage Ultra, this same processor did let us have the highest quality. So here the bad point is that it does not allow us that quality even though it is the same processor and has spent a little more time for optimization. But if you do not get demanding with respect to the selection of graphic quality, definitely the experience in this game will be extremely fluid with good quality also in the effects, although not the most advanced, and of course good stability. In addition, it did not get extremely hot. In fact, it did not exceed 40 degrees Celsius in this game, so I think it's a good experience. In the Legends game, we changed the automatic setting to a manual setting and set the quality to high at 60 frames per second. And even though we set 60 frames per second, it actually went up to 120 frames per second at some point. But you should know that the warm-up was a little bit higher, although for some strange reason when you measure the temperature, it actually looks like it's not that hot, but somehow it gives the feeling in your hand that it's a little bit warmer. So, here we had a good quality in the game, although obviously after a while it dropped in its frames to top out at 60, so that's why we didn't have an exaggeratedly high stability, but definitely that the experience was good. In the SpongeBob game, by default it has the quality and resolution on medium, but for this test we went up to high in both cases due to its price and adjusted to 60 frames per second. In this game, if you don't record the screen, the experience is acceptable, but it is curious that recording the screen, the performance dropped dramatically, so it is likely that this device has limited the processor power to avoid further heating, as the heating was not extreme but simply reached 41.4 degrees Celsius. So it maintained an acceptable temperature, but the performance undoubtedly fell short, especially, I insist, when recording the screen. So, I think that the right thing to do on this cell phone will be to play with simple graphics with low quality or with low refresh rates. And finally, in Genshin Impact, by default it loads low graphics quality, but for the test we went up to high quality and also went up to 60 frames per second. Without recording the screen, we could say that the experience is still acceptable and smooth enough, but by recording the screen, we will encounter a bit more difficulties and more cuts during our gameplay. Obviously, it doesn't freeze completely, but it's not a 100% fluid experience. So, obviously, for those who are demanding in games and like an ultra smooth experience, this experience is going to be completely bad. The right thing to do would probably be to play with slightly simpler graphics settings or even to play without recording the screen. So for gamers, this device is a must-have, but for casual gamers, it could still be a good experience. And for the moment, this has been all regarding this device. I hope you liked this video. If you did, you know you can tell us about it, and we'll see you next time.